Hey, what's up, Scott? Thank you so much for your patience. We've been trying to make this happen for the longest time. I feel like we both have great energy since we first met each other. It's just been quality vibes. I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Give us a little bit, of your snippet, your background, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. And first off, thanks for having me. And, man, I love what you're doing. I love the mission. Everyone I've connected in and around your world said nothing but great things. So, beyond thrilled to be on here with you. Let's kick things off. Who is Scott Garber? Guys, I'm from South Florida originally. Grew up an athlete playing soccer, hockey, football. If it had a ball and it involved being outside, I was there. Coming up, I knew that I wanted to do something at the collegiate level, but didn't know how to get there. So really, as I got into high school, started to hone in on a craft that was pay me to go play and get an education at the next level. And so funny enough, I took my soccer background, figured out I could kick a football pretty damn far. And that's how I ended up in the collegiate sports world. So my journey starts at the University of South Alabama. I was a highly recruited punter coming out and had an opportunity to go ahead and start the program at South Alabama from the ground up. So when I got the letter or the call, they said, hey, we got a heck of an opportunity for you. We play University of Tennessee, which is where I was originally committed in 5 years, and we got a full scholarship. And so when I committed there, and it was piles of dirt and a dream they were selling me. And so fast forward, we scaled that program up, and that really laid the foundation for the entrepreneurial spirit that I have. We'll get into what I'm doing on the professional side, but it's contagious when you build something from the ground up to do something, you put your name, your legacy on it. It's something really cool. So that's my background a little bit in sports. I came out, really wanted to go and get into business in some capacity, but what they don't tell you when you're an athlete is they do all the time blocking for you, right?
Yeah,
when you have to go, when you go into meetings,
Yeah.
when you have to be at the field. And so that was a tough learning lesson, if I'm being honest. I had to come out and figure out how to structure my life as a post athlete. How do you make money? How do you handle money? How do you handle time versus money? So these were all lessons that I learned early on in my sales career. And yeah, man, I'm really excited. I don't know, where do you want to steer the conversation? You want me to keep rocking? You got questions
No,
for me?
I want
What
to
you
take it
got?
back. I want to take it back to your time
Cool.
when you were highly recruited football player, University of Tennessee, D1. Obviously some things happened. Can you talk about, having to adjust? Because I feel like you already had an inkling, like a trial run of adjusting or transitioning.
Yeah.
As athletes, professional athletes, elite athletes, whether it's, D1 athlete, D2, NAIA, junior college, high school to college, college to pro to retirement, that adjustment period when things you think are looking sort of like in the right direction, now they shift. How are you able to reassess your situation and, choose
Yeah.
South
No.
Alabama?
It's a great question, man. So coming out, when I committed to, Tennessee, there was a coaching staff that I became really familiar with. And you realize that you can only control what you can control. There are some things that are out in the universe, and whether that be in sports, in the real world, whatever it may be, that are just out of your control. And at 18 years old, 17 years old, I didn't really understand that concept. And so this was a lesson that was forced on me. I didn't choose not to go to Tennessee. It was one of those where you get the dreaded phone call to say, hey, we have different philosophies, than the staff that recruited you. Best of luck, with your endeavors. And so it really just made me grow up. And when you're forced into something, you can either lean in and embrace it. Luckily, I had a great support system there at the time, and you just start to lay out the next logical step. And it was the first real lesson that said, you know what, don't count that money until it's in your bank account, because a lot of us we get ahead of ourselves, and then it's not guaranteed until it's all said and done. And so to sort of come full circle with it is the second lesson I taught is if you are putting yourself out there and you have a brand, when something falls through, you have to have backup options, right? Because this
Yeah.
world isn't perfect. And so, subtly that lesson was taught, where it was like, Scott, if you got to have multiple backup plans and be able to adjust on the fly. And so the mindset at the time, if I'm being transparent, was just reactive. I had no clue what I was doing. I was trusting the people around me. But the transitions, once I landed at South Alabama, I think the biggest lesson was learning how to fail forward. That's something that athletes are really, you have to learn how to do that, whether it's in practice, during a game. I mean, what do? You're playing soccer, you're playing football, you go down, like you mess up, right? Being a punter, I was on an island. You mess up one time, like how do you fail forward and get better? And so that whole experience laid a foundation for me to go ahead and work on those skills that directly translated into everything I'm doing in sales and my lifestyle now.
No, it's really cool. I really like how you brought up fail forward, because as athletes, we already have that innate nature. There's games that we play, we win and lose. It's not like you've seen anyone go undefeated, through the course of the season. So we know how to lose, and we know how to take lessons from our losses and apply it to our greater good. I want to talk about your time at South Alabama. You talk about, being able to see something from the ground up. It started from, not any funding to like playing Tennessee, like that storybook right there. You can make a movie from that. But can you talk about how you were able to apply the principles from South Alabama to all the things that you do now?
Yeah. So when you have a blank canvas, it's really cool because you're not inheriting any legacy ideas, right? So this is, that was my opportunity to come in and put a unique perspective on something that now as players come into the system inherit. And so, I see a lot of parallels in what I did at South Alabama to, some of the situations we find ourselves in as a society today. There's a lot of change going on in society. There's a lot of overdue change going on in society. And once you have that platform, I think it's really powerful when you know a responsible way to put your fingertip on change and help guide people. But through that process, it was an ebb and flow. It wasn't just, this is what Scott Garber and the staff at South Alabama and the players want. You had to understand what the fans wanted, what the city wanted, what the community around it wanted. So it really became a family more than just the guys that I was playing around. And you realize that as an athlete, you have a platform to really make a change. And I think that was really, it bred a confidence in me to say, regardless the scale of the issue, if you have a concerted effort and you have a movement behind you, you can accomplish big things, just like going back and playing Tennessee or, winning our first game in the SEC or building a stadium on campus. And I mean, you could just keep rattling them off of the successes. But just know there was a lot of hardship in there. It wasn't all roses, like anything worthwhile, it's a bumpy hell of a ride to get there.
That's facts. So now you graduate South Alabama, you're looking for a job, you get your sales job. Can you talk about I want to talk about athletes and sales. I feel like they perfectly align in terms of like they thrive in that, in those type of roles. So can you talk about some things that helped you in this space?
Yeah, I sure can, because, one of the best things about being an athlete is you learn how to be coachable. And I think mentorship and coaching in the sales world is everything. And so shout out to my uncle, Steve Noodleberg. I'm actually doing some work with them at On the Ball Ventures as a relationship builder. And Steve was my coach. I came out and I always put my uncle on a pedestal. He was a serial entrepreneur. And he took me under his wing, and he taught me some of the foundations of selling, right? And selling is it's a broad term, right? A lot of people think about it as the used car salesman. In 2020, over the last decade, 2010 to where we're at now, and the game isn't about what you know, but the game is about who knows you. And so much of it is about building that brand, portraying who you are, what you think, your opinions, and becoming relatable. And so, I think that athletes have all the intrinsic makeup to make great connectors. And when you're a great connector and you have a great story to tell, you can sell just about anything, because, you know, we're not storytelling anymore. We're story selling. And so it's like, the better you get at this craft of telling your story and being relatable, most athletes already put the hard work in. So that's the part that comes natural to us. So I would say, you know, just being coachable, being humble, and knowing that there's going to be failure in order to get to something that's bigger than, you know, the immediate instant gratification is probably some of the biggest things I took away in parallels from sports to sales. No,
respect. And, you know, you mentioned instant gratification. How would you, like, what would you recommend an athlete do, you know, whether they go pro, whether they, you know, are done after college, to think long-term when it comes to, you know, their ventures, you know, or the things that they want to do?
Yeah, you know, so this is gonna be a long-winded answer here, but for the first, so you know, I told you about this offline. Last June, man, on paper, me and my girlfriend at the time, she was a former athlete she played softball at Springfield College, and man, on paper, we had it made in the shade. We were making money. We were living downtown Denver. We had it going on. But since we were both athletes, we were coming out and we were in this reaction state all the time. And so we hung everything up. We bought an 11-foot travel trailer from 1977. We turned our phones off for 5 months and we crushed 20,000 miles across the US. And you know what that made? It gave me time to figure out how I define success and what I want from this short time that we have here on earth. And so, you know, some of the bigger advice I would give to athletes and humans just in general is you have to figure out what your North Star is, what success is, and not the ripple effects that come around it, whether that be money or accolades or whatever that may be. And the closer I got to being where my feet were, I was able to define what success really meant. And then I was able to go ahead and put ventures in place that align to exactly who I am as a person. And so I would say take some time, become present, and understand who you are. And then you can start to manifest all kinds of really unique ventures that align with who you are as a person.
Man, that's bars right there, Scott, because I feel like, I don't want to say athletes go through the motions, but like once you go pro, it's like, all right, I worked my whole life to get to this point. Now I have money to like take care of my family. But outside of that, like, what is your purpose? And like, I'm currently reading My Purpose Driven Life. What on earth am I here for? And I don't have the capacity to go on a 5-month road trip like you. Wow, that sounds amazing. Definitely want to try that at some point. Just understanding your purpose, understanding your why builds clarity in your actions day to day. And it can help you with your transition, help you with your actions, help you with your investments, because now you know this will ultimately lead me to whatever my goal is in life. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's really important for athletes to take note.
And you gotta know where you're going. You know, it's like, you know, we always use the analogy of Waze, right? Like, you know, you can get directions on that thing to wherever you want. But if you don't have an endpoint, well, shit, you're just driving around in circles. You know what I mean? You can drive anywhere you want, and there's cool things going on. Like, I'm not going to say that's not a fun venture, but if you can't clearly define what success looks like, then how the hell are you going to get directions to get there? And I think that was the biggest thing for me, was like, once you put that target up there, hell, we can reverse engineer how to get anywhere, especially athletes. You know, like you got an off season, you know, you got to put on 20 pounds of muscle. And we know the workout routine that we got to get to, so we're in playing shape come season. Why wouldn't we take that same mentality to life, right? But you have to think. It causes you to think. And once you establish that and get over that hurdle, man, the world's your oyster.
Man, I love that. You know, I just had to write that down, man. You always come with the gems, man. Always come with the gems. So obviously, all right, now you come back from your road trip. Find Myself road trip tour. I highly recommend that to other people. Maybe not 5 months, but something like that where you have that journey. Now, catch me up. On the Ball Ventures, that sounds like amazing. You're doing another project I would love for you to share, a financial startup. Give us the rundown.
So it's really cool. So On the Ball is a family venture, and the ability to plug into anything legacy around the family is always cool. And so, was super fortunate to have those guys reach out to me and be a part of something great. I'll drop a link in. We have a morning huddle on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Everyone can come check it out, completely free. And if you think the nuggets I'm dropping here are bombs, man, just wait till you come check that channel out. I mean, my uncle and cousin are boom. So I'm doing that, but my main focus is around Munch Money, and Munch Money is a fintech startup. Funds from a central holding account out to fully controlled virtual or physical debit cards. And so just to give a little context to the listeners, my background's been in sports technology forever. That's where my passion was. So I was like, how can we take this and start to marry it with the collegiate athlete, especially with name, image, likeness on the horizon and some of the antiquated processes that live in schools. And so we were proving the concept and modernizing the way that per diems were distributed from the university out to the athletes. We can make sure they only spent it on food. You can now start to gather where the athletes were swiping the cards, drive some transparency into that. So we were having, success with that until coronavirus just reared its head up and, yeah, we don't have to talk about that. But it gave us an opportunity to sort of take a step back and say, okay, we have a cool distribution method, but like, what do we want to do? How, where can we take this? And so, that's when our paths crossed, because financial literacy is one of those areas where we don't really teach it in schools. We have neglected huge pockets of this country with just even the rudimentary basics of finance, how to budget, what is compounding interest, what's a Roth IRA, very basic things. And so through conversation, we found a unique way to partner with a couple different financial literacy applications to now start to serve as that practical arm. So as you're learning about budgeting, instead of going and getting a credit card, now we can have a really controlled environment in which we can, show what works, what doesn't work, without accumulating a ton of debt or getting into a huge hole. And so that's been really exciting, and that's come up over the last few months. And then lastly is like, on the nonprofit world, there's a lot of money, especially with COVID, coming into one side of the funnel. But then we were seeing that it gets bottlenecked and there's not getting back into the community where people want it.
That's true.
So with our technology, we can put a geofence around it. You can donate money into the nonprofit of your choice. And now we're giving them the ability to distribute it and make sure that it goes and is spent at the small businesses in the community. So now it becomes cyclical and we're able to see those funds really elevate there. So a lot of interesting use cases. And I got to tell you, a lot of doom and gloom in the world right now, but we are making a difference at scale, and it's been a ton of fun.
And that's what I love about you and what you guys are doing, because it's action. It's not just words. It's not just hearsay. It's not just, to appease people. It's actually action behind, what you guys, like your mission and your values. So I really respect what you guys are doing. Can you talk about some of the upcoming partnerships that you guys have in store? I know some of them are off record and, I'm not allowed to discuss, but in terms of like what it looks like from, helping students from a financial literacy standpoint, what does that look
100%,
like?
100%. So, in the K-12 market, there's an application called Planet. Shout out Derek Wesley, former educator who saw the gap in the space where, they weren't teaching financial literacy. And so with his educating background, he's made some strategic partnerships with Sensei. And those guys are building something that, can be consumed across the K-12 spectrum and really be proactive in teaching financial literacy. So we partnered with them. We're in late stages with a couple of nonprofits to go ahead and serve communities, not here just domestically, but, overseas as well. So now they can, leapfrog and, start to take advantage of some of the enhancements we have here instead of, going on that slow bell curve. And then, we're exploring partnerships in the in the collegiate athletic world as well. So, with name, image, likeness starting to permeate the landscape, being able to educate athletes so they don't make that mistake of when you get a huge signing bonus and you don't understand what the tax structure is going to be on the back of it. Now you can start to really make money moves with, the platform that the NCAA is going to be affording them over the, upcoming years. So that's what we have on the horizon. And again, really excited about going back to where I came from to start to elevate that population.
No, that's amazing. And so you've been a college athlete, you've worked in sports tech. Now you're working in like fintech space. Growing up, what would you have liked to see from a financial literacy standpoint? Like what topics or sectors or themes that you felt like you would have loved to learn, or where do you feel like athletes need to focus their time on educating themselves in?
So I feel that's a great question. I feel like so many people want to jump right to investing, right? Where should I invest my money? And if I'm going to be real with you, I think we got to learn the blocking and tackling. We got to learn the absolute basics of compounding interest, right? Because, it's amazing if you put $5,000 into an account and over or with the power of compounding interest over the next 40 years, you could be a millionaire. People don't understand that, right? Or, like one of the big hurdles for me that I didn't really understand was, hey, it's a great benefit. We'll match up to 3% for your 401k. And coming out of college, I was like, cool. Like,
sounds like free money to me.
The hell's a 401k? You know what I mean? Like, I heard my parents talk about this, but so really just, I think if we're able to elevate the baseline knowledge, it'll open up organically some of those conversations around how to choose a financial advisor, right? How are they compensated? Or should I invest my money in stocks or bonds, right? Like, the long-term versus the short-term. There's just so many different conversations that organically come about when your baseline of knowledge is just a little bit higher.
No, that's really important. And you bring up a great point that once you learn things and you understand the basics, it's like, why teach someone calculus if they don't even know arithmetic?
Boom.
So
what they say, you got to crawl before you walk before you run before you sprint, baby.
Yeah. So that's what it's all about. And it's really interesting to see like what you guys are doing. And I'm really proud of what you guys are doing and like the impact that you guys are having. Where do you see the future of, fintech, sports all going? Because now you see athletes, being more invested in their finances and transition and opportunities off the field. Where do you see it all going?
I think if you would have asked me that question 3 months ago, I would have had a way different answer for you. Man, I think there's a ton of change that's permeating the landscape. I think we're, name, image, likeness. I think I'm going to just focus in there because it's a tangible one. But the ability, I think we're going to see some of these old amateurism laws start to be eradicated. We're going to see people from the onset develop a brand, whether, that's in peewee football or hockey or gymnastics, and really have that follow them through. So I think that there's going to be new self-fulfilling ways for them to monetize their own brand as an athlete, which I think will allow, a lot of social change to take place because, here as humans, we really value all the intrinsic things that go behind an athlete. So we have trust in them. And so I think that we're gonna see athletes start to take control of a system that controlled them for a really long time. And I think it's going to be really bumpy to start. There's going to be a lot of hiccups as we unravel, a system that made everything else professional except for the athletes. Just say that out loud makes me just cringe, right? Like, the TV contracts are professional, the facilities are professional, the coaches are paid like professionals, but the athletes aren't. So I think that's going to be a bumpy ride, but it's all trending in the right direction. And ultimately, it'll give more of the power to the athletes. And I think we'll have a more inclusive, holistic environment versus this almost segregation we see between the athletes and the big corporations, universities, et cetera.
No, yeah, that's a great answer. And I'm really excited to see it. And I I understand your sentiments when you say it's going to be a bumpy road, because people are like just so excited and they think it's just going to be a seamless transition where no, there's going to be a lot of mistakes that are going to be happening. So it's going to be interesting to see, how the key stakeholders involved really kind of push the agenda. So I'm excited, and I think it's really important for these athletes also to protect themselves, because it's going to be new territory.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really cool, like talking to startup, sport techs across the landscape. I mean, there's all kinds of new platforms coming out on the blockchain. ProShark, go check it out if you haven't, is an awesome platform.
Yeah, shout out Derek.
Shout out to Derek, who's building something that is going to drive transparency, that's going to bring all of this to the forefront. And so I think, the wool was pulled over our eyes a lot of the time, because it's like, just don't ask, don't tell. This is just how it is. Yeah. And that shit ain't happening anymore. So it's really cool to see how the landscape is changing. And I've been excited, man. Like we're moving in the right direction, day by day. But yeah, it's bumpy. It's think about recruiting. Think about recruiting. Like if UCLA is recruiting me, or Florida State's recruiting me, just based on pure tax structures, if we go back down to like the basics, I'm going to Florida State all day. Like, I mean, let's go Noles, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think there's going to be a lot of those unintended consequences that we're just going to have to work through. And, but we'll get there. We're a resilient bunch. We'll get there. It's just going to be bumpy.
No, that's true. Scott, I want to thank you for your time. In closing, I want to get back. I want to ask you again, because you're like well connected. I feel like everyone I know knows you somehow, speaks highly of you. The power of relationships and the ability to, have genuine relationships. What would be your advice? Because athletes, they can get in front of any door. They just have to be proactive. So what advice would you have? And then I'm going to close with your question of the day that you asked me last time offline. But start with the relationships piece.
So your networking is one letter away from not working, and that it becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay,
think about that.
I like that.
Networking.
I was like, all right, yeah, let me. I told you. Scott with the gems.
Hey. And so, it's one of those things where I have found the more you experience and put yourself outside of your comfort zone and become vulnerable, the more you grow and become relatable to anybody across the spectrum. And so what I would encourage athletes, we tend to, with success, develop an ego and think that we know what's right. And I think that we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. So I would say become really polished on telling your story, but become really relatable. So when you can listen and hear people, you're insatiably curious, but then you're able to go ahead and respond and be relevant in their world. And I think when you meet in the middle there, you can find value in a ton of different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be a transaction, but it could be introducing people. It could be personal. It could be professional. There's a million different ways that you can skin that cat. So be vulnerable, put down your ego, craft your story, and be excited to learn why people think the way they do. And it opens up doors that I could have never imagined.
Yeah, I really take that to heart. Got to be an active listener, and you got to be a value add, not just monetarily, but different ways, like whether it's an introduction, whether it's just actively listening to them and, sharing your own scenarios and experiences based on what they're telling you. And obviously, you got to have a good conversation, athletes, your salesman at the end of the day. So close us out with that question you asked. I think it's a question that needs to be asked, to anybody in a conversation. I really enjoyed it. So with that being said, yeah.
So I wish I could take credit for it. A good friend, old roommate of mine, John Solomon, I heard him ask this question, and then I moved it into when I was dating. It was a dating question for me, but I'm getting married now, so
congratulations, by the way, locking it down.
Man, it's time. And so now it's a networking question, and so the question is, if you could tell me one thing you've done in your life that you would recommend I do or experience in mine, what would that be? And just in the vein of networking, you know, everyone back in the day used to have a Rolodex, you know?
Yeah.
I have a Google sheet of everyone that I connect with, and I put this answer down. And so it's really interesting how people answer it, what comes top of mind for them, because you catch them off guard, and then it makes them, you know, reflect on, you know, that one thing that pops right in their mind, and you can just learn so much about a human through that question. It's been a gem for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So where can we find you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn's my channel. You know, I mean,
Talk about that.
like,
Talk about why you chose one channel. Like, I really enjoy that, because people try to be everywhere, but focusing in on one, and then maybe if you want to spread out. Like, can you talk about why you chose LinkedIn?
yeah. So I mean, LinkedIn is the most powerful tool as far as business goes. And if I'm going to connect with people, I want to connect with people of influence. And so, I mean, it's a really unique way to see someone's story digitally before you even get on the phone with them. And you're able to go ahead and do a lot of vetting out of, like, selective. I want this person in my world because of X, Y, and Z. Some of the other social platforms are fun. You can connect, you know, with a lot of different people, but I'm all about substance. Give me quality over quantity any single day. And so LinkedIn's been again, you know, Steve pioneered LinkedIn 5 years ago and was teaching this strategy, right? And then tactics to go ahead and build that strategy. And so, you know, with consistency on LinkedIn, man, we're on this podcast together. I mean, I didn't know you from anywhere, you know, it's like, you know, and so it's just like, it's been the one channel that has just been so fruitful time and time again. And if you feed the feed, engage with the feed will give you everything you want in return. And so that's my advice there on LinkedIn.
Man, respect, man. Thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate having you on the podcast. We're definitely going to have some of the show notes that you provided. But yeah, we'll definitely be keeping in touch.
Awesome, man. I'll drop all my follow-up contact information, LinkedIn handle. I'll even drop my Facebook, Instagram handle on there just for personal connections. And then the Munch Money website as well. So if anybody, you know, if there's want to have a conversation, let's grab a virtual cup of coffee and see where we can take things.
Respect. That means a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for